What's up, y'all? Very special bonus episode today with my friend Bert Stewart from Covington, Kentucky. We are doing an episode with him today. Hey, Bert.
Hey, how the are you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for asking. Bert was kind enough to respond on our Facebook page early on in our infancy of doing the podcast. We had a last minute trip to Louisville, Kentucky, and we decided we could not pass up an opportunity to meet Bert in the middle of his hometown. And I'm really grateful we did.
Get it right. It's my hometown. I moved here, and then I decided I actually liked it. I thought there's no way you'd ever move here, so I'd tell you about it, and that way it might actually be on here.
We would never have known about this place. He's right about that. So I apologize. It's not his hometown. At any rate, you're going to have to listen to this whole episode if you really want to know what the we are talking about right now. Ladies and gentlemen, my new friend Bert Stewart from Kentucky.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Hey listeners, ever wonder what it would be like to sell everything and travel the country at the tender age of 50? Well, with our last kid off to college and the ability to now work remotely, we've decided to do just that. So we're selling the house, loading up the dog, and hitting every city from California to Florida. We're scouring the country for a new place to call home and dragging you into every restaurant, Airbnb, and tourist trap we encounter along the way. This is the Skiptown All-Stars podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to Skiptown All-Stars. This is a special bonus edition. We have on Zoom with me a gentleman by the name of Bert Stewart, who is one of our earliest engagers on Facebook, and very happy to have him. Bert laid out a very compelling case for two towns that he's fallen in love with in the past, and we are going to jump right in. Welcome, Bert.
Hey, how's it going?
All right. Thank you for doing this on a Monday morning. I appreciate it. You are in Covington, Kentucky now, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And that's where you currently reside. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, your family life, where you come from, all that background?
Well, I was born in Michigan, moved to Florida, spent a lot of my summers in Washington State and in Michigan. And then we moved to Montana, and then we ended up moving to Indianapolis, Indiana.
Wow.
And I lived there for a long time and moved around, kind of lived in Louisville and Evansville, Indiana. And then I moved back to Indianapolis after living in Idaho for a little bit.
Yeah.
And I spent a summer up there working at a resort. And then
Can I ask which one?
Hills Resort and Priest Lake.
Okay, got it.
It's beautiful up there.
We've been to McCall, but if you would have said that, I would have said, oh, wow, okay. Small world.
Yeah. If you ever get a chance, go up to northern Idaho. It's probably the prettiest place in the country I've been to.
Yeah, a lot of people say it's great up there.
And then
not far north.
And that, it's a whole different world up there. It's beautiful.
Nice.
And then I ended up staying in Indianapolis for quite a long time, and I got a job. I work as a thermal spray operator, which is kind of an unusual trade. And then kind of worked my way up through the company, and then my position ended up going away, and I still had a job, but I wasn't particularly thrilled. And then somebody reached out and asked me if I wanted to work in Mexico, and I said, hell yeah, I want to work in Mexico. It was a nice spot down on the coast, and it would have been great. And then the company was like, actually, we want you in Cincinnati. And I said, hell no, I'm not going to Cincinnati.
That's a big change.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then later that same day, another company reached out to me and said, hey, would you like a job in Cincinnati? I said, well, that's 2 in 1 day.
Yeah.
What's
going on in Cincinnati?
I can take a little drive and see what I think.
Right.
And we drove over here, and I'd looked up before we got here a couple of possible places that I would want to check out. and one of them was Covington, northern part of Covington, in Cincinnati, and then another one was OTR in Cincinnati, which is kind of downtown, like the hip spot downtown Cincinnati.
Okay.
And we got out of the car, and I instantly heard some music playing. We walked around a corner, and it happened to be Dark Charge Day. If you lived around here, you would know what it is. It's there's a brewery called Braxton's, and they have once a year Dark Charge Day where they only make dark beers, and they combine with like a lot of the local restaurants, and they put the beer and all their food, and they have like 5 or 6 food vendors doing food, and they do music, and we went, and my wife only drinks dark beer, and I don't really drink at all, but I eat. So and the food was delicious, and they had music playing. It was great. And when we were walking away, there's a mosaic, artsy mosaic, and one of them, and I looked right down, and it said, "You belong here." I said, "All right, fine." I took the job, and yeah, I ended up not staying there very long. But then I moved to a new job that Cincinnati's kind of a hub for what I do, and I really like it there. And now I work 3 days a week. And
you work 3 days a week?
Yep, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah,
which I know kind of sucks from some standpoint, but if you travel, it's cheaper to travel during the week, and there's all kind of lunch specials at restaurants. So if I want to go out to eat, you can just go out to eat for a lunch special, and it's half the cost of going out for dinner. And then we cook dinner at home.
Right.
So I kind of keep my life inexpensive as possible, so I can do as much as possible.
Yeah. Sorry for stepping on you. Zoom makes it a little complicated. There's a slight delay, but I was hoping you could tell the listeners. So you mentioned your profession. Can you explain exactly what that is?
Okay. Well, basically, I'm the first step in refurbishing like an aircraft engine part. So if a part on an aircraft engine wears out, I will spray metal in that area, and usually we'll use like say tungsten, and it will build up that area and also offer more wear resistance. Then they'll machine it back to perfect. So a lot of parts we refurbish are actually better than they were brand new. Wow. Because they're refurbished with like a harder metal or a corrosion resistance metal. Right. We also will put on like thermal barriers, so you can run the engine hotter without melting them. Okay. And then we also do like zero gap clearance coatings, which turbine engines spin, and when it spins, it expands. Yeah. And also when it heats up, it expands. So if you were to have just a plain metal shroud, you would either have a gap at the beginning, or you would hit your metal part when it's spinning. Right. So what we do, we'll put on like a polyester coating or a graphite coating, depending upon how hot the area is. And when the blade spins, it cuts into it, making a perfect seal. So at first it's a perfect seal, and then when it expands, it cuts into it a little bit. And then once the engine's been running for a while, it stabilizes, and it just stays that perfect seal. Got it. So your job title is thermal spray operator, you mentioned. Yeah. Right? Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. So what makes you? I'm just going to follow on that thread for a second. Not a problem. What makes Cincinnati such a hub, or the Cincinnati Kentucky border such a hub for that kind of work? What I think happened was a lot of companies like GE and other aviation companies have their own little shops, but honestly, a lot of them get behind on their work. Yeah. And so Cincinnati Thermal Spray opened up, which was a big thermal spray shop. Okay, so it was a major hub for that. And when they opened up, they were open for a while, and then part of that company broke off and made another company called Ellison Surface Technology. Okay. And so then there's 2 really big thermal spray shops, plus there's GE here, and there's a company I work for, Standard Aero, which is a worldwide aircraft refurbishment company. Wow. Okay. And then And then some other little companies kind of broke off of Ellison's and started Cincinnati Thermal Spray. And so since we have GE here and we have Standard Aero and we have the thermal spray companies, there's several shops here that are really big for what I do. There's some other areas that have it, and actually it originally started off as a naval technology. They used it for making parts corrosive resistance and things like that. And it also gets used for like paper milling. You have those giant spools that flatten out paper to make it smooth, and those get wore out over time. So we can spray it up with, say, a tungsten coating, and then machine it to glass mirror finish, and it's super smooth and super durable. And so when it gets wore out, you don't have to make a whole brand new one. We can just spray it up, machine it down to perfect size, good to go.
Got it. Okay. Very cool. So that paints the picture of what you do. I want to rewind for a second because you've lived in a lot of places. So what was it? And I presume all those places were sort of from your childhood on. Were you in a military family? Why did your family bounce around so much?
Well, my grandparents were snowbirds, so it kind of started with that. They lived in Michigan and in Florida, and my dad grew up in Michigan.
What part?
And, Lansing.
Oh, okay.
Lansing and Owasso, and we had a cabin at Holton Lake, Michigan, which is where my grandparents lived most of my childhood, at least in the summer. And then in Florida, we lived in Bradenton, which is just south of Tampa.
Okay, yeah.
And my family kind of owned a whole street. It was like my dad, my grandparents, my aunts, my great aunts, and like we owned one side of a whole street that ended in like Orange Grove Fields.
Oh wow, okay, great.
And and then my dad was a nurse, and he was like a director of nursing. And he ended up getting a job in Montana as like a director of nursing, and part of the reason he went up there was a school to get his doctorate in nursing.
Right.
And when we got up there, they hadn't told him that the school was about to close.
Oh.
So we were up there for a few years, and we moved. We lived in the mountains at first, Anaconda, Montana, which is close to Butte, and then we moved across the way to Miles City, Montana, which is in the plains.
Okay.
And then my dad got a job in Indianapolis, where he could also go to school and get his doctorate. So he ended up getting his doctorate, and he planned on becoming like a bigwig executive at some bigger hospital.
Right.
But during the whole time he was going to school, he ended up working weekends and was down to working like 2 or 3 days a week, and had 5 weeks of paid vacation off. Yeah. And he was like, and making enough money to get by really well, because weekend shift, you get bonuses for working on weekends. And
right.
So I stayed in Indianapolis quite a long time, and then I kind of tried to leave Indianapolis a few times. I went up to Idaho for the summer, and at the end of the summer, the job kind of went away, and I ended up back in Indianapolis. And so that's how I kind of
like in Indianapolis. Did you like Indianapolis as a place to live?
It's not too bad. I've said since I was a child, if you're over 21,
I'm like swatting a fly here. I'm afraid I'm going to be like Mike Pence when it lands on my head. So.
Well, don't shoot somebody in the
see
face.
Me swatting flies. Like there's a single fly from when we put the dog out earlier. So
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Indianapolis is nice if you're over 21 and you have some money.
Yeah.
And you're willing to go out and find things to do. There's not a lot close to Indianapolis. But it does have, sports teams, and I'm not really into sports, but it has a really good arts. There's a pretty good group of people trying to keep the arts in Indianapolis. They have a good theater. They have a permanent fringe festival building for theater, and they have, you know, museums and stuff like that. So it's
Right.
not it's not my favorite place in the world, but as long as you, like I said, are over 21 and have some
Right.
money, especially if you're into sports, you know, you can have a pretty good time there.
Yeah, you have the Colts and all that. So
Yeah, the Colts and I guess the Pacers, and
yeah.
they have a WNBA team, and they have a minor league hockey team, and they have a soccer team now. Um, so they, they it's okay. Um, it's not my world's favorite place, but um, it's not too bad.
Okay, got it. So, okay, so let's. The one thing I want to ask you about real quick is you mentioned you only work 3 days a week, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who are pretty envious of that right now. What is it about your job or your situation that allows you to have 4 days off every week?
Well, our company tries to run 7 days a week, and one of the ways they do it is they have 4 day shift position, 4 days a week, and then a 3 days a week.
Uh-huh.
And because you're working on weekends, I only work 36 hours. I work 3 12-hour shifts,
Uh-huh.
but they give me an 11% pay bump, which equates out to the same as missing those 4 hours.
That's awesome.
So working 36 hours, I get paid the same as if I were working on day shift,
Right.
4 days a week.
Wow.
Four
Okay.
tens.
So
So
yeah, I mean that's you know, obviously the responsibility of being, you know, like your father was a nurse or a firefighter or a cop or something like that. It's kind of rare actually in an industrial position or skilled labor like yours that you would find such a thing. So it's amazing you're taking advantage of that.
actually, you'll find that in a lot of manufacturing now, it's and things like that, like GE, they have similar schedules
Oh yeah.
available
Okay.
and stuff like that. Just because you, people prefer working 4 days a week or 3 days a week,
Yeah,
and
totally.
then if you work on the weekends, you know, you do give up some things. Like a lot of stuff happens on the weekends, but I get out of work at 5 p.m.
Okay.
And so if something's going on, I can go do it. And I'm pretty flexible because we don't have a night shift on weekends at this time. It went away during COVID.
Uh-huh.
Um, I can come in a little late and stay a little late, or I'll take a couple hours off because they give me quite a bit of vacation time, and they're very flexible about that sort of thing. Um,
Yeah.
so I really like it. Um,
That's great.
and
Um,
and and I prefer doing things during the week if I can, 'cause there's less people out.
yeah,
So,
totally.
so there's some distinct advantages. And my daughter, she's, you know, going to be 28 soon, and
Uh-huh.
she lives on her own. So I don't have any like, oh, I got to go to the kids' baseball
Baseball
game or something.
games.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally,
So
totally. Uh,
so
so,
we don't.
so you're an empty nester then. You
Yeah.
and your wife are empty nesters. Okay, so let's bring it to your Facebook post again. Thank you for that. You mentioned two places. We're going to start with. I know you're living in Covington, Kentucky, but
Correct.
let's start with your other mention, which is Yellow Springs, Ohio. And I personally am familiar with it just because I'm a huge Dave Chappelle fan, and I know how sort of active he is in the community, and you know, all the news stories about his ups and downs of local civic involvement. But you mentioned it as well, and I'm assuming you mentioned it from experience. Why don't you tell me one of the reasons, or why don't you tell me the reasons you think Yellow Springs is so great?
Well, it's a fun hippie town. Like
Yeah.
and like Dave Chappelle says, it's a little dot of blue and a sea of red.
Yeah.
And it's a very progressive town. They have great food there. There's not a ton of restaurants, but it's a small town.
Yeah.
And your wife said she's kind of interested in living in the country, like
Yeah.
out of the city.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling she'd be miserable living an hour away from everything. But if you live somewhere in Yellow Springs or just outside of Yellow Springs, you at least have, you know, groceries right there. Some pretty cool festivals kind of happen in the town.
Sure.
All those little towns around there are connected by bike paths. which Ohio is really good about. There's like 2,000 miles of bike paths in Ohio where you're not even, it's not like, oh, you're riding on the road in a bike lane. They have, converted railroad tracks into bike paths and independent bike paths and stuff like that. So we'll go up there and park in another town and then ride our bikes to Yellow Springs.
Got it.
Get out, do lunch, and then ride our bikes back. Just something fun to do.
Yeah, totally.
And then also right Yellow Springs is named after Yellow Springs, which they have like a park, and it has some gullies running through it and some really nice hiking.
Yeah.
My wife just got home.
Hello.
She waved.
She waved.
Anyways, and so it's a fun little hippie town.
Got it.
And they have a little movie theater there that does some art films, and I'm not really sure. Not done a lot of movies there, but I know they do art films along with more mainstream films. And Dave Chappelle's there, so
yeah,
and he's opening up. He's opening up,
right?
What?
You might bump into him occasionally, sure.
You might, and he does his Dave Chappelle and Friends. They took over like a wedding venue place that's out in the cornfield.
Yeah,
and they do some shows there. Those are expensive though.
I'm sure.
It was a hell of a good time.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at it right now on bestplaces.net, and it has a population of 3,700. Median income is 61,000. Median home price is 285,000. Median age is 47.4, which is basically putting it in the sweet spot of empty nesters like you and I. And then comfort index, the summers and winters seem to be winter gets a 5, so it's even on the scale, I guess. But in the summer it ranks at 9, which I think is pretty high. So for the listeners out there, you may want to check that out. I personally am from Ohio, and I can attest that when I've gone back to my hometown or my areas where I grew up, you're right. There are a lot more bike paths now than there were when I was growing up. We used to have to ride our bikes down the 2-lane highway with semis going by and everything. So it's great to see, all these townships and communities sort of banding together to create thoroughfares for people who want to enjoy the local landscape and pop in, like you said, from town to town. So Ohio is I grew up in Lake Milton, Ohio, which is it's outside of Youngstown. It's near Kent State, somewhere in between there. And a lot of reservoirs in Ohio, a lot of rolling hills. I've spent some time down in Cincinnati, a few weekends here and there when I was younger, when I lived there. I'm curious to see what it looks like nowadays. I probably haven't been to Cincinnati in, 20 years. So, but that brings us to so how far is Covington from Cincinnati?
Literally across the river. I'm 6 blocks from Cincinnati.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Okay.
Maybe if you want to count the river as a block, I guess I'm 7.
Yeah. Got it.
And I specified in there, if you wanted to live in Covington, north of 12th Street, because you go south of 12th Street, this whole town kind of was dilapidated up until 10 years ago, maybe, and they've started revitalization. Like my house I live in was built in 1868 or something like that, and before they got their hands on it, it was termite infested, falling apart. The whole roof, like you wouldn't know on the inside right now just that it was built in 1860 because it's all brand new.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And a lot of the houses around here were like that. They ended up just getting gutted, but it's been revitalized.
That's great.
I bought my house 4 years ago, and for like $150,000, and now it's gone up. It's probably worth $250 now. That's
amazing. In just 4 years, $100K.
Yeah, because every other house on my street was kind of dilapidated, but now
Right.
there's like one or two houses that aren't dilapidated, and they're on the books to get fixed, and I kind of, when we moved here, we saw that this area was kind of up and coming, and
Yeah.
it had a great vibe. I live a few blocks from a park with like a glockenspiel, big bell tower,
Oh yeah.
and that has the mechanical German glockenspiel
Sure.
type thing.
Sure.
And there's a pool. There's probably 20 bars and restaurants within a 15 minute walk from my house.
Okay.
It's a real ideal little area, and the whole area is also connected by something called the South Bank Shuttle. It kind of does this loop. It goes up through Cincinnati and across to Bellevue, which is another small town
Yeah.
on the edge of Ohio, and then Newport, and then Covington. It just does a loop, and it costs $1 to get on. You can hop on, hop off, and a new South Bank shuttle comes every 15 minutes.
Oh wow. Okay. So public transportation is present there.
Yeah, it's not as good as say like London or New York, but
Right.
for the Midwest, it's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, for sure.
As long as you live like along the river, it's pretty great for just kind of getting around. Because if you go, the South Bank shuttle stops at all the stadiums. There's the football stadium, there's a baseball stadium, there's a hockey arena.
Yeah.
And then presumably you could probably get to the new soccer stadium, which I've not been to yet, but because it's odd, it's surprisingly popular. It seats like 22,000 people, and they sold like 20,000 season tickets. It was
Wow.
great. It was
Holy cow.
surprising.
That's great.
The amount that I think they probably should have built it bigger. Like
Yeah.
I think they were just hoping they were going to be successful. I think it was successful beyond what they thought it might be.
That's great.
So yeah, my area of Covington is very progressive, especially for the West. Like specifically, my little area is kind of the gay area. We have a couple gay bars, and our crosswalks are rainbows.
Sure.
Like,
Okay.
so, and you just wouldn't think of that in the Midwest. I work in a fairly blue collar field, and most of the guys I work with are certainly not progressive. Like,
No, yeah, for sure.
there are plenty of Trump flags, but
Yeah.
my neighborhood, there was, plenty of Biden and whatnot, and gay pride flags and stuff like that. So
Right.
we kind of live in a pocket of more liberal people. So it's nice from that standpoint.
Got it. Yeah, for sure. Diversity is important, obviously, to Denise and I, wherever we go. And, it's funny because I listen to my children talk, and, it really is fascinating. So I'm a Gen Xer, I presume. How old are you? Can I ask?
45.
Okay. So you may or may not be a Gen Xer. You may be, what year were you born?
77.
So yeah, you're a Gen Xer. So, we're in this sort of hybrid generation where, our parents had a certain way of thinking. We didn't necessarily think that way, but because we were Gen Xers and our general attitude was to say, whatever, man, we just kind of like let it go. And it's funny to hear my kid, like these facets that you mentioned are, interesting to our generation, but my kids it doesn't even register with them, like what people are. I'm not saying they don't see color, because they do. And I think it's ridiculous when people say they don't, but, for them, it's just like not a thing. It's not a barometer for whether or not they're going to be friends with people, And so anyway, to your point about, this area of yours is up and coming and all that. Wherever you see this kind of thing happening, I think a lot of people are put off by it, and my only response to that is it's 2022. Sometimes people are gay or black or whatever, man. You just got, you know what I mean? It's like, dude, like it's been around our whole lives. Like, you know, when I say it's like other people who aren't like us. It is America. You know, what's the big deal? And you know.
Exactly.
Anyway, so without getting on a political soapbox too much, you know, it's not, like I try not to dip too far into those waters in our podcast, but at the same time, I do think it's important when Denise mentions like, oh, I prefer to live in a place where people are sort of progressive minded. And you know, and the reason for that, I think, is when people are progressive minded, you get bike paths, you get community centers, you get, I remember from your post that the arts are very important to you. Culture is a thing. And so, you know, we go off, we fight all these wars to preserve our culture, then why not engender that in our own communities, right?
Yeah, exactly. We're really into theater quite a bit. We kind of hop around and do a lot of different stuff. But probably theater is one of our most consistent things, like Fringe South Theater. I don't know if you're familiar with Fringe festivals or not.
I'm not. Explain, or the listeners, okay. For sure. Like I've heard of them, but I don't know what it.
So like the biggest one's probably in Edinburgh, Scotland, but there's several around the country. I know there's a big one in Ohio. I mean, not Ohio, Orlando. Indianapolis Fringe Festival is actually going on now. I left work Saturday and drove to Indianapolis, and we saw 2 shows. So a Fringe Festival is a festival of performances. It can be anything from a comedian to a play, some dance, and things like that. And they're all an hour long. And they arrange them so you can go from one to another to another. There's a half an hour between each show. And you just pick what show you want to go to, then you pick another one. And Indianapolis Fringe this year's smaller than used to be. It's kind of recovering from COVID, but it's 68 different shows, a total like 280 performances over the course of 3 or 4 weekends. And they're all an hour long, and I would say most of the shows are adult friendly. Like there's going to be cussing in the plays. Most of them. There a lot of them are LGBTQ friendly or put on by LGBTQT plus whatever performers. But it's not only for that. There's some magic shows too, and oddly enough, Indianapolis has a fairly big magic scene. He's one of the performers that's been there forever. Started off in Vegas and is friends with a ton of magic performers and just brings them in. He does an amazing job of that. So you gotta go, and they have street performers and the beer tents, and you kind of hang out in between shows, and you go from show to show, and you see things that are a little odd. Like the 2 shows I saw, one of them was Ship of Dreams, which was one of the best shows I've ever seen. And it basically, they did the Titanic movie in a hour, and they kind of poked fun at all of the little idiosyncrasies of the movie, and it was just fantastic. And then I watched there's a boy band called Unforgettable, and they do parody songs, and they did a show called QAnon the Musical, which kind of poked fun at QAnon, and ended with a positive note saying, hey, just don't be a douche. Like that was their final song. Totally. You can be QAnon, but quit, just let people be, was the final.
I know there are other factors that make you love Covington, Kentucky. Can you tell me, sell me on Covington?
Okay. Well, like I said, it's fairly progressive, this specific area. So you have that. Like the South Bank Shuttle connects everything around here, and And then I'm a big foodie, and Covington, Kentucky won Best Food in America for like 2 years.
Wow.
And it is, when I moved here, I was shocked at how good the food is here. The only city I've really been to that I feel compares was London. I really like the food in London with all the street vendors and stuff like that. But the sheer level of quality of the food in this area is amazing. We're on the Bourbon Trail, so you can go to a lot of different distilleries. Our friends own one of the distilleries down the road. They're just super cool guys. And there's breweries here if you're into beer.
Yeah.
And then there's a ton of different theaters where you get music performances. There's everything from like the Thompson House, which is the guy who invented the Tommy gun.
Wow.
It's been turned into a music venue. And then right next door to it basically is a Ovation, and it's like a 2,000 seat I don't know, theater. And there's probably 10 music venues / play venues within a walking distance even from here.
Wow.
Or if you hop on the South Bank shuttle, you can get to almost all of them. There's 4 music venues along the Ohio. Some of them are inside, a couple of them are outside music venues. There's a place called Bogart's, which is this big like bar complex that does larger national, international shows. It's not, they don't get like really big names there, but they get some fairly big names. And then we get big names at the hockey arena. We saw, Cher was supposed to be there not that long, a while ago, but it got canceled from COVID. We've seen, we went there and saw New Kids on the Block, which I thought my wife liked, and so I saw that tickets were $25, including all the fees, and I was like, let's just go. It was like a Tuesday, and we went, and I didn't know any Backstreet New Kids on the Block songs. I knew like 2 or 3 of them, but they ended up having Salt and Pepper, and I knew all their music, and In Vogue, I knew all their music, and it was a fun time. But it was $25, so who cared? I rode my bike there,
Yeah.
And so it cost us $50 to go out to a concert of a pretty big name. We just went to Backstreet Boys. I feel like it's some of the boy bands.
Yeah.
But it was outside. There's a place called Coney Island. It's like a water slide park, and they also have an attached like outdoor amphitheater that seats like 20,000 people or something like that. So we get pretty big bands that stop there, and it's just a ton of different variety of venues. So you get anything from a 300 seat bar venue all the way up to a 20,000 seat arena.
Nice.
Or outdoor amphitheater.
So the arts are alive in Covington, Kentucky.
Yeah, and most of the bigger bands and stuff come through here, but if not, we're an hour and a half from Indianapolis. We're an hour and a half from Louisville. We're an hour and a half from, everything's an hour and a half away. There's Lexington, but if it doesn't come here, it goes to Indianapolis or it goes to Louisville. Pick one.
Right.
Or most of the time it goes to both of those. But we get a ton of stuff through here. Broadway tours, and we have a Cincinnati Broadway. They do 7 different shows every year.
Right.
And then Indianapolis has their own Broadway, and they do 7 different shows than us every year, usually.
Right.
So we can even do some Broadway shows, which aren't necessarily my favorite, but some of them are really awesome.
Yeah.
And we have a playhouse, and we have the arts museum. There's a children's museum complex that has like a Holocaust museum at it and stuff like that.
Right.
There's an aquarium in Newport, which is a 30-minute walk from my house. It's right on the Ohio River.
Nice.
And Cincinnati has a ton of like food festivals. There's one, at least one every weekend during the summer. And I've many times have gone to like 3 or 4 different like food style festivals with music and stuff like that.
Sure.
I just went on my bike, and there's like one on the across the river, one on this side of the river, and then one there's another there's the Licking River that separates Covington and Newport. And so Covington side has a riverfront venue that does festivals, and then Newport has a riverfront area for festivals, and they throw festivals at the same time. So I'll go from one to another, and they have music playing and food, and you know, depending upon what the festival is, sometimes there's like an art festival, so you'll go and you know, browse around those. And then we have all the sports if you're into it, and apparently you are.
I personally am.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm big into bands. I'm big into sports. You mentioned Broadway shows are not necessarily your thing. I'm not really into musicals, although before we left Los Angeles, we went to the Pantages and saw Moulin Rouge. I thought it was a great show. There was one particular number in that show where I was like, damn, I was super impressed. So, you know, so it's not like I'm closed off to that thing. You know, I'm in this weird sort of artsy creative / meathead space, you know, where I like where I like I'm a very visual person. So competitive sports, you know, the arts, I can stand in an art gallery forever. So I just, you know, like my eyes are I'm led by my eyes, I guess is the easiest way to put my personality, my tastes. So but yeah, sports, obviously with Cincinnati being right there. I guess so then you generally would fly in and out of Cincinnati Airport, but you have all these other options within a few hours, depending on where you're flying. Or
and actually Cincinnati Airport is not in Cincinnati. It's not even in Ohio. It's in it's just south of me. It's in Kentucky. So I'm actually closer to the airport than if I were in Cincinnati.
Oh, I didn't know that.
10 minutes from the airport. It's actually in, like I said, it's in Kentucky. And so I can get to the airport in 10 to 15 minutes. And it's not a super busy airport. And a lot of the lower priced airlines fly out of there. Frontier and Allegiant fly out of there. So for less than $100, I can get to Florida.
That's awesome.
My sister lives in Florida still, and we'll just fly down there. Last time I flew down there, I flew into Orlando. It cost me $69 round trip, including fees. I pack a bag that fits under the seat in front of me. I go down there for 4 days and whatever. It cost me $69. You know, my sister picked me up at the airport, and
that's a huge selling point, obviously, for us with our kids scattered around the country. You know, we're
kind of central. So
yeah, you absolutely are. That was one of the so Knoxville. For people who know me, know that I've worked there for a short time, and that was one of the allures living there, especially when my wife's family, like, they're kind of spread out now, but for a time they were all in Florida. And so for us, living in Knoxville had a lot of appeal because for the reasons you mentioned, like I could fly into the Sanford airport. I didn't even have to go all the way to Orlando for where you know my relatives lived, and it was like somewhere between $50 and $80 generally for a flight from Knoxville, and it's a couple hours later and boom, you're there. And I mean, obviously the smaller airports are fantastic because it's kind of a little more in and out, you know.
I have global entry, so I just walk through the line. There might be 5 people in front of me, and if I happen to get to the airport early, I just go to a lounge because, you know, I
totally
have a credit card lets me get in the lounge and just chill out, get free drinks and a little bit of snack and hop on the plane. It reminds, now that I have global entry, it reminds me of the days when flying was easy. Like I don't have to take off my shoes.
It's so hellish now. I know, it's so crazy.
Just walk right through. And then within a couple of hours, you can get to all sorts of things that are kind of neat. Like there's state parks with like Ohio has like 4 or 5 state parks that have resorts at them that are state run, and they're really beautiful. And, you know, on a lake. And then there's like Serpent Mound National Park, which has like this giant ancient mound that was made into a shape of a serpent.
Right.
And you go there and you see that kind of history. And there's Bone Lick historic site, which I guess is a tar pit. I've not been there, but
no, me neither.
I think it's a tar pit. And they have like buffalo and stuff there too. And then you go south of here 2 hours or so. There's a place called Red River Gorge, and it has rock climbing and hiking and a natural bridge, and you can go down there and just all those things. So, and just the George Clooney's family lives like an hour from here in this little town. I forget what it's called now. Jeez. Anyways, there's a little town just south of here where George Clooney family lives down there, and the Rosemary Clooney house is there, and you can tour it. And there's a couple nice restaurants, and it's right on the Ohio, so it's a pretty spot. You go down there, walk around, see some of the shops, eat at a restaurant. You can do a tour of the house. Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff within a short distance of here. I lived in Indianapolis for a long time, and it's not even, I'm an hour and a half from there, but you would not think it was that close.
Yeah.
Just because we're kind of in the hills. I go south of here, I can get to Gatlinburg in a few hours. Knoxville's close.
Yeah.
And just get outside of town a little bit, and there's not mountains, but it's hilly and beautiful that way. We're on the river, and then there's some lakes and stuff. The only thing that we're really missing is the beach, and like you've experienced living in Knoxville, you can just hop on a plane and get there in a couple hours.
That's great.
Well,
you're certainly selling me. I mean, you're actually making me pretty damn excited about it. I must say, it wasn't really even in my hemisphere when you mentioned it on Facebook, and you've only done more in this conversation to, intrigue my interest. So I definitely think at some point, Denise and I are going to add this to our list. I'm looking at the best places ranking for it. 8 reviews, 5 stars. Not a lot of reviews, but 5 stars is great. Population of Covington is 40,000. Unemployment rate 5%. Median income 36,000. Median home price 148,000. The median age skews a little younger than Yellow Springs, like we were just talking about, at around 36 years old. Comfort index 8.4 in the summer, same in the winter as Yellow Springs, 5.4%. Covington violent crime is ranked at 32.6. The U.S. average is 22.7. Covington property crime is at 53, and the U.S. average is 35. So I think what you were talking about, making sure that, you're sort of properly picking your neighborhood in Covington makes sense. It's not, look, I grew up, or I didn't grow up. I lived in Los Angeles for 26 years. So, these measurements don't mean a lot to somebody like me coming from the city. I'm like, whatever, man, I can spot, a sketchy area as well as the best of them. You know what I mean? But I think your earlier point about, making sure that, the neighborhood that you're choosing above, I think you said 12th Street or something like that.
Correct.
Is sort of on your radar. I think also, it kind of speaks to, growing up around Youngstown, Ohio, I can tell you there are places in Youngstown that just still and may never have made the turn since, the shutdown of the steel mills back in the 70s, and drugs are a problem everywhere in the United States. In Youngstown, it's no different. And so, for me personally, having come from a steel town or sort of a manufacturing environment where you've seen the decay, but then you also see these sort of enclaves of, I think what you're experiencing right now in Covington, making the turn and slowly, generating better communities. I think, if you get in at the right time, then, you're sitting on a potential, future home, a generational home for your families, So Pittsburgh certainly made the turn. Cleveland has made the turn. I think, I think a lot of people are looking for, smaller communities like yours to get away from those areas and sort of, when you're showing that kind of growth that Covington, Kentucky is showing, it's a huge attraction for, especially people in our age bracket, but even families. It sounds like there's plenty of things to do for people there with a younger family.
Yeah. I only brought it up. It's not necessarily my favorite place in the world, but it's a nice place.
Yeah.
And you said you had family in Ohio.
I
and
do.
I know that it's not on many people's radar. Like
No.
my dad, he lives in Indianapolis still. And when we moved here, he's like, this place is amazing. I was shocked when I moved here. Because the people are friendly, like the Midwest friendly thing. They're even friendlier here than they were in Indianapolis. And the weather, we're just far enough south where winters aren't super bad. I think, and since we've moved here, they've gotten less and less. I really think global warming's having a little bit of effect on it.
It's a thing. I can tell you in Salt Lake right now. I mean, it's a thing. The lake is drying up. So.
Oh yeah. So, the weather is probably my least favorite thing here. But it's not horrible.
Yeah, no, it's totally.
Thing. But I brought it up because I know it's not on anybody's radar, but it's surprisingly nice. And people have started to recognize that. We have Emilio Estevez moved to Cincinnati.
Nice.
And he's now the voice of our we have like a trolley car, and he's the voice for it now. And they've started making movies here. There's been several lately. Nothing major motion picture, but they've started making some movies here and things like that. I was very surprised when I moved here, how much I actually do like it, and how much there is to do, and how good the food is, which is a big deal to me. So
I think that's a big deal to many, many people.
But at the same time, it's not crazy expensive. So I can afford to work 3 days a week. I can work overtime. I'm allowed to. I just don't, because I don't need to. So I keep the time off.
That's awesome.
And just, like I said, I bought my house. It's a nice house. It's not huge, but there's only two of us. It's $150,000. You can still buy a house in my neighborhood that's nice, fully remodeled, $250,000, and be in a very desirable location if you're into being able to walk to a restaurant and things like that. And there's fairly high end but there's also like Waffle House close to us, and so you could do breakfast for $7 easy.
Yeah. We just actually got out of Idaho City a couple days ago, maybe 5 days ago, and we had a similar experience. And if you listen to one of my earlier shows, breakfast cost me by myself at least $28 with tip. Right. So for eggs, it's so ridiculous. But the other day in Idaho City, we had a similar experience where it was like, Denise's entree was $7. We split an extra order of pancakes for $33.30, and it was delicious. It was like, okay,
exactly.
It wasn't like scrap food or anything like that. So
a couple here, if you go to not the fancier places but nice legit restaurants, we have Korean place and we have Chinese place and various Mexican places and empanada spot and just a bunch of different things. But we can go out for $30 for the two of us and both have a drink and stuff like that. We can also go out and spend $100, no problem.
No, of course.
But
there are options.
At the same time, I can go relatively close and go to a full-on tasting menu, and the two of us can get out of there for a couple $100.
Right.
But when I was in Vegas, I went out to a tasting menu, and the two of us got out of there for $600.
Yeah, it's a huge.
And I actually enjoyed the tasting menus here more.
Yeah.
So
totally. Oh, well, don't even get me started on Vegas. But I spent 4 days at a volleyball tournament there right after COVID, like right after everything opened up. So, but obviously there are no buffets. It wasn't the old Vegas that you and I had visited in the past. It was brutal. It was just. I was a captive audience, and the team decided to stay at Excalibur. It was a horrible hotel. Anyway, well, I want to thank you for both of your mentions for Yellow Springs, Ohio, and Covington, Kentucky, which has really intrigued me, I must say. I think Denise and I are going to have to pay a visit when we do our sort of East Coast / Midwest, or East Midwest tour, I guess, for lack of a better word, because we are going to hit the Knoxvilles and the West North Carolinas again. And Covington, Kentucky sounds like a place where we should definitely check out upon your endorsement.
Yeah, and if you come in town, we can show you around if you want, or
It'd be great.
Whatever.
I would love it.
That wouldn't be a problem, especially if it's during the week.
Yeah, no, for sure. We'll definitely come Monday through Thursday. So,
and yeah, I wanted to say I've enjoyed your podcast. It's quite good.
Thank you.
I actually enjoy the fact that you will not only speak the positives, but you speak the negatives, which is unusual, and I like that.
Yeah.
And my only note is I don't know why you beep stuff. Like it.
Oh, why I beep stuff?
Like you're not editing for a TV show, man.
No, I know.
You're editing for a podcast.
No, it's
Even
funny you say that.
Doesn't beep.
It is
NPR doesn't beep.
It is a habit to just bleep stuff. I don't, to be honest, I don't entirely know our demographic yet, since we're still sort of in our infancy. And for the moms who are actually listening to us while they may have young ones in the car, I don't know. I mean, I'm not convinced that young wives are listening to us. Wives, I should say, with young children. I know we're definitely probably more in the zone with moms who have teenagers in the car who have heard far worse than what Denise with her potty mouth spits out. But yeah, I don't know. That's like,
it's your show, but
I know.
Come on, man. You're in the podcast world.
Like, I think we're just still new. I think we've been on our best behavior, honestly, so far. Although, I think in the next few episodes, we've had sort of a rough and tumble time from, I would say, Bend, Oregon, all the way through this visit. We're leaving Salt Lake City today, but we have some mishaps to share. It has not been the clean run in Salt Lake City. I'm shocked, to tell you the truth, and I'm totally teasing an episode you haven't seen yet, but right. I'm shocked that a place where I've been 3 times already was such a rough trip. So, and you'll
have that sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. So anyway, more to come, but I will consider your note about not bleeping. I have considered it actually, but I don't know. I think Denise probably sides with you.
I found you through LeeAnn's podcast, of course.
Oh, that's true.
And then I found her through Bert's. So
I'm not going to be a Bert fan. I mean, that's the thing. It's so funny because, we know them. And although, our 2 daughters have only been hanging out together for, just over a calendar year. And Georgia, Bert's daughter, was not inclined to have kids over for the longest time because, Bert's a wild card as a dad. So you never know what you're going to get, I guess, from Georgia's eyes, as my daughter Ellie tells me. But, Bert and LeeAnn have been just overjoyed that Georgia finally broke her impasse on, allowing people to come to the house. And my daughters were there. Even Mia, my middle daughter, who you'll meet in the Utah episode, she and Ellie were at their house this entire past summer. So, I mean, we didn't, when the kids weren't working a job or doing something, constructive with their time, they were totally at Bert's house. And to your point, I think, I don't know, maybe it's me who's being a stick in the mud so far. So
Hey,
to be
like
continued.
I said, even NPR doesn't beep.
I know. Yeah, I got to think about that. I guess I was worried early on about getting flagged by like YouTube or, community guidelines kind of thing. But all right, we're gonna let our freak flag fly, and it's gonna be your fault if anything bad happens.
That's good. I'll be a bad influence.
Yeah, totally. So, well, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Bert Stewart, for joining us today. I can't thank you enough for engaging with us early on and finding us through, obviously, LeeAnn's podcast. Her fans have been so amazing in terms of, supporting us and just offering great comments and everything. And your insight in particular, though, I had to chase this lead down and talk to you about Covington today. So
that's great. Yeah. And like I said, if you're ever in the area, feel free to contact me. We can show you around a little bit, show you some of the oddball stuff that's here.
Yeah, man.
I definitely say, from my point of view, podcast fan, however long you end up needing to go, you're not making a TV show with commercials.
I know.
Some of your podcasts have been an hour, some of them have been 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Whatever's the appropriate amount of time, make it that long.
That's good advice. Thanks.
Because a lot of us are listening in the car. I listen at work. I have 12 hours, buddy.
Yeah.
A lot of
That's a good point. Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, that's the feedback that we were all so we hear Bert and Tom talk for 2 hours, right?
Right.
And we're like, when Denise and I are talking about it, we're kind of like, dude, nobody knows who we are. Like, we can't support a podcast that goes that long,
Why not?
If it's good, it's good, right? And if the conversation is flowing and it makes sense, then why not?
Yeah, don't edit the shit out of it. Like,
no. Yeah, no, I can't.
We're listening for your banter. We're listening for whatever you have to say.
Right.
And we have time. Like, me and my wife listen to Two Bears, One Cave together, but it's almost always on a road trip. Like, we're an hour and a half from a ton of stuff. So
totally,
if it's round trip, that's 3 hours.
Yeah.
So if your podcast is less than that, we're going to hear the whole thing,
Right. No, yeah, for sure.
But at the same time, you don't have to make it 3 hours. But if you have the material, leave it in.
Good. Good. Yeah, for sure. Well, to your two things, to your point. Number one, when Bert first told me, like, he showed me his studio. I hardly knew him when he showed me his studio, and he said, but he knew that Denise and I were selling the house, and he said to me point blank, he was like, "You guys need to do a podcast about your travels and all that stuff." It wasn't even. I listen to podcasts. I listen to a lot of like the sort of fiction podcasts, Over My Dead Body is a good one, although I think that's like more of a docu. But anyway, I listened to a slew. I listened to the Black Tapes podcast. I don't know if you've heard of that, but that was like, that's all supernatural, creepy radio shows type stuff. So I've listened to those. And my first statement to him was, aren't podcasts like super saturated now? And he's like, no. He's like, you could, and the thing with me working in television is like, I already have all the gear. Like, I have, I edit primarily as my career path, but I've shot stuff in the past, and I have an audio recorder and Zoom mics and all that stuff. So, so in the end, it was like, okay, well, I have all the gear, and I guess we're just going to produce this show while we're on the road, And then the other point is, we really are, like, I haven't been able to have time to cut the video for like our YouTube channel, but I think it's going to be essential. Just, where we are now, it's like we're pulling great numbers early. But I think if we're going to expand, I have to start doing video on YouTube rather than just, I don't know if you've seen it on YouTube, but I do like the waveform, sort of like when we talk, the audio goes like this, and it's just like a standard waveform thing. But we recorded Mia the other day with 3 cameras and all that. And So, I have to start putting that together, but which, also proves your point. There's like, I don't have time to edit the shit out of it. I just like, I've got to like just cut to the camera when I need to see somebody talking and just keep going. I don't have time to like, oh, let's move this here. And, it's not Dr. Phil I'm trying to do here where I'm like, recreate the entire episode. Oh, this topic should come here or that. So your point is taken on both things. So I appreciate it.
I mean, one of the biggest podcasts in the world are not edited much,
I know. And it's like Bert, I know he just rolls tape and then after it, he stands up, walks out. And there may be a comment or two where it's like, I'll take out that one thing about this or that joke fell flat, take that out. And then, but that's it. His guy Halston just like bang. And the next thing you know, it's up and streaming, you know? So anyway.
Your shows are edited nicely. I enjoy them. They're good. Especially right out of the gate. But I mean, that's what you do. So yeah, it's not surprising.
I know. I feel like it's getting easier to talk with my middle daughter, Mia, that we just interviewed the other day. I mean, we rolled tape for like an hour and 45 minutes, which I think is too long. But so, I'll boil that down a bit. But like you said, if the conversation's flowing, then it helps me because I just don't have as much stuff to cut. So I think I just have to get to a point where I'm kind of nudging the conversation along a little better. So it's going to come with time. I mean, honestly, I need to be a better interviewer. Denise and I both need to be better interviewers of each other and just get to the get a little sooner sometimes. But,
But like I said, most of your audience, especially now, is probably coming from Bertcast fans and stuff like that. And they're used to longer things and they don't mind some of that stuff, and you both are charming people, and so it's not painful to listen to, and you have concise thoughts. Like some podcasts I've tried and I just can't do it. I'm like, nope, these people I can listen to. But you guys have a good thing going. So
thanks, man. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you chiming in early as well. I really do. It's like it just it's, when you're throwing stuff out into the abyss, it's kind of like, all right, what are people feeling or whatever. And obviously our friends are supportive, but it's like, that job you got in college selling steak knives or whatever. It's like, once you sold them all to your family, then, it's like, now you don't have anyone to sell steak knives to. So it was good to know that Denise and I are selling steak knives to more people than just our core, 60 friends or whatever. It was 60 acquaintances, So that part's been great. Anyway, but cool, man. Thank you so much. I've taken up so much of your time. I'm going to take up more of it. I'm really not shitting when I say I want to visit your town. So,
okay. Not a problem. Like I said, I've arranged my life to have time.
Good for you.
That's been my goal my entire life. I've wanted to retire since I was 5, but since I can't, I keep my bills within reason because I want to have a nice house. I want to live in a reasonable neighborhood. But, when I lived in Indianapolis, I lived in a condo that was $60,000, but it was in a little sweet spot of cheap, but in a nice area, and I've lived I don't have a car payment. I just pay cash for it.
Same with us. We had that's why we had to sell our cars leaving LA because we knew our cars were so old. We hadn't had a car payment in almost 9 or 10 years.
Right. Yeah. And if you do those types of things, it frees you up. I don't make a ton of money, but I make good money for this area. Yeah. And as long as I keep my bills low, I can do whatever the fuck I want.
Oh man, there you go. I love it. That's kind of where we find ourselves here now, but we're just taking our first footsteps into that sort of lifestyle. It's been great so far, other than some bad road bad road trip experiences, but
once you eventually, if you start slowing down your travel, it gets a lot less expensive.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, at least stay a week someplace because you get weekly rates.
Yeah.
one thing I do is my dad and I have an RCI together, and that has a yearly fee of like $700. But RCI has last minute deals for a week. You can book them up to 3 months out, and they're all over the country, and they're $260 for a week at a condo.
Yeah.
So, we'll do a last minute deal and just kind of go someplace. We don't even have to stay for the whole week. We'll just stay for 4 days.
Yeah, 260. It's like, okay, we can leave a day or two early if we feel like it.
Yeah, it's cheaper than staying at a hotel.
Yeah, sure, for sure. So that's all good advice. All right, man. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your week, the rest of your time off this week. I love it.
Will do.
Yeah, man.
Going to a concert tomorrow, and then this weekend coming up, I'm going to Indianapolis again for the Fringe Festival. Nice. I took a day off for this one, though. So
nice. Very good. All right. Well, tell your wife we want her on next time. Denise is going to interview her. I appreciate you sticking your neck out and sitting on this Zoom with me. I appreciate it, man.
All righty. Thanks a lot, man.
All right, dude. Talk to you later. Okay.
Right, bye.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.